everyone, welcome to our podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk about a topic that is very important in our daily lives, especially because we use technology almost every day. Our topic today is computer network. We use computer network when we connect to Wi-Fi, send message, watch video, play online games, attend online classes, and even when we use online banking. But do we really understand what a computer network is and how it works? To discuss this topic, I am joined by Sawa. Hello Sawa, welcome to our podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm happy for being there. I think computer network are interesting topic because we use them every day, but sometimes we don't think about what happens behind the screen.
Exactly. Most of the time we simply connect our phone or laptop to Wi-Fi and start using the internet. We don't really think about how the data travels from our device to another device. So let's start with the most basic question. What exactly is a computer network?
A computer network is a system that connects two or more computers as our device. The device can communicate, exchange information, and share research through the network. The device can be connected using cables or wireless technology. For example, when several smartphones and laptops are connected to the same Wi-Fi networks, they are connected through a network.
Okay, that's right. So basically, the main purpose of a computer network is communication and sharing. It allows devices to communicate with each other and access different research. For example, in school, several computers can be connected to the same network. Students can access the internet, use share printers, or access certain systems. Computer networks are also used in office. Employees can share documents, access company application, and communicate with other employees.
Yes, computer network are also used in our homes. For example, imagine a house with one router. A smartphone, laptop, smart TV, and maybe a tablet can connect to the same Wi-Fi networks. The routers always use a device to communicate with the network and access the internet. So even a simple home Wi-Fi connection is already an example of networking.
That's true. And I think that's why computer networks are so important. We don't have to work in an IT company to use networking. Almost everyone use some type of network today.
Exactly. And computer networks are not only about the internet. A network can also exist without directly connection to the internet. For example, computer in a local office can communicate with each other through a local network. They can share files or use a printer even if the network designed for local communication.
Now let's talk about the types of computer network. There are several types, but three common types are LAN, MAN, and WAN. Let's start with LAN. What does LAN stand for?
LAN stands for Local Area Network. LAN is a network that covers a relative small area. Example, it include the home, classroom, computer laboratory, office, or school building. That device in LAN are usually local, related close in each other.
Right. For example, if there are 20 computers in one computer laboratory and all of them are connected to the same network, that is a LAN. The next type is MAN. MAN stands for Metropolitan Area Network. It covers a large area than LAN, such as different locations within a city or a large campus.
And the third type is WAN, which stands for Wide Area Network. WAN covers a very large geographical area. It can connect network across different cities, countries, or even continents. The internet is the most well-known example of a WAN.
So, if we want to remember the difference easily, we can think about the coverage area. LAN is usually small, MAN is bigger, and WAN is a much larger.
Yes, exactly. The bigger the geographical coverage, the larger its network type. Although each other has different characteristics and users, they all have the same basic purpose, which is to allow device and system to communicate.
Okay, now let's move to network devices. One device that most people probably know is a router. We usually see routers at home, in schools, device, or public place. A router helps connect network and directs data to a right destination. So, what about a switch?
Switch is another important network device. It is commonly used to connect multiple devices within a local network. For example, in an office, several computers can be connected to a switch. The switch helps the device communicate with each other.
Exactly. Another device is a modem. A modem is commonly used to connect a local network to an internet service provided by an ESP or internet service provider. There is also an access point. An access point provides wireless network access to devices such as smartphone and laptops.
So, although this device may look similar to normal users, their functions are different. A router manages communication between networks, a switch connects device within a local network, and an access point provides wireless connectivity.
Correct. Understanding this basic device is important because they are the components that help build a functioning network.
Now, I want to ask you something. Which one do you think is better, wired or wireless networking?
I think it depends on what we need. Wired network use physical cables such as Ethernet cables. It is usually a good choice when we need a stable connection. For example, desktop computers, servers, or gaming PCs can benefit from wired connection. But wireless networks are more convenient. We can connect smartphones and laptops without using cables. What do you think, Sawa?
I agree. I personally prefer wireless because it's more convenient. We can move around while staying connected. For example, when we use a laptop, we don't need to sit close to the router with a cable. But wireless connection can be affected by distance, walls, interference, or other factors.
That's true. Wired connection can also be inconvenient because we need to manage cables. So each method has advantages and disadvantages. It depends on the situation, the device, and the purpose of the network.
Now, let's discuss how a network usually works. When we send data over a network, the data is divided to a smaller units called packets. These packets travel through the network to each destination. Network device help direct these packets.
And one important concept in networking is the IP address. An IP address identifies a device on an IP network. We can compare it to a home address. If we want to send a package to someone, we need their address. In a similar way, network communication need addressing so data can reach the correct device.
Okay, there are two major versions of IP addressing that we often hear about. They are IPv4 and IPv6. IPv4 is still wireless use, while IPv6 provides a much larger address space. This is important because the number of devices connected to the network continues to increase.
Yes, today it's not just computers and smartphones that connect to network. We also have smart TVs, smartwatches, security cameras, smart home device, and many others Internet of the Things device. This is one reason networking technology continues to develop. Okay, let's talk about the benefits. The first major benefit is communication. Computer network allow people to communicate quickly regardless of distance. We can send messages, make video calls, send emails, and use social media.
Another benefit is research sharing. For example, several computers can use the same printers in office. People can also share files and other research through the network. This can make work more efficient.
Another important benefit is access to online service. We can use online banking, online shopping, streamer platforms, cold storage, and online learning because of network connectivity.
computer networks are also very useful in education. Students can access digital learning materials, attend online class, submit assignment, and communicate with teachers in lecture. University also use network for academic system and student service.
And in the workplace, networking allows employees to collaborate more easily. People can work together even when they are in different locations. Remote work would be much more difficult without reliable network. So networking has changed not only technology but also the way people study and work.
However, there are also risks. One important issue and that is network security. If a network is not properly protected, attackers may try to access private information.
Yes, for example, attackers may try to steal passwords, personal information, or important files. That's why we need to protect our device and network. Some basic security practice include using strong password, keep software update, and avoiding suspicious links.
We should also be careful when using public Wi-Fi. Not every public network is secure. We should avoid entering sensitive information on networks that we don't trust.
Exactly. Network security is not only the responsibility of IT professionals. Normal users also have an important role. We should understand basic security practice because our personal information can be valuable. Simple mistakes, such as clicking a suspicious link or using a weak password, can create security problems.
So, learning about networking also means learning how to use technology responsibly and safely.
After everything we've discussed, it's clear the computer networks are very important in modern life. Imagine if there were no computer networks, we wouldn't be able to communicate and share information as easily as we do today. Many online services would also be unavailable.
Yes, sometimes we don't realize how dependent we are on networks. When the internet suddenly stops working, we immediately notice how many activities are affected. We can easily send messages, watch videos, attend online meeting, or access online service.
Exactly, that's why understanding basic networking can be useful for everyone, especially students studying technology or information system. We don't have to become network engineers. But if we understand the basic, we can better understand how technology communicates. We can also troubleshoot simple problems such as checking whether our device is connected to Wi-Fi or whether there is a problem with the router.
And for students who are interested in IT, networking can also become an important skill. It can be useful for careers involving system administration, cybersecurity, cloud computing, software development, and many other areas.
Well, I think we have covered many important points today. We start with the definition of a computer network. Then we discussed LAN, MAN, and WAN. We also talked about routers, switches, modems, access points, wired and wireless networks, IP address, benefits, and network security. Sawa, what do you think is the most important thing people should remember from today's discussion?
I think the most important thing is that computer networks are fundamental part of modern technology. They allow devices to communicate, people to share information, and different digital services to work. But at the same time, we should use networks safely and responsibly.
I completely agree. Computer networks may seem complicated at first, but we can understand them step by step. The next time we cannot connect our phone to Wi-Fi, send a message, or watch a video online, we can remember that many networking processes are happening behind the scenes. Thank you so much, Sawa, for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I really enjoy your discussion.
And thank you to everyone who listened to our podcast. Hopefully, this episode has helped you understand the basic concept of a computer network in a simple and interesting way. Keep learning, keep exploring technology, and see you in our next episode. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our podcast. It's great to have you here again. Today we are going to talk about a really interesting topic from the world of information, technology and cybersecurity. Our topic today is steganography. Now, if you never heard the word before, don't worry. It sounds complicated, but the basic concept is actually quite simple. Steganography is basically about hiding information inside something else. And to discuss this topic with me today, I have a special guest, Rika. Hi Rika, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Of course. So, Rika, before we get to technical, let's start with something really simple. When you hear the word steganography, what comes to your mind?
I think about hiding secret information is something that looks normal, like an image or a file.
Exactly, and I think that's probably the easiest way to understand it. Let's imagine this. I send you a normal picture through WhatsApp. Maybe it's a picture of a sunset, a cat, or even a selfie. When you open it, you just see normal image. Nothing seems strange. But behind that image, there could actually be hidden message. And that's what makes steganography interesting. The goal isn't essentially to make the message unreadable. Instead, the goal is to make people aware that the message even exists.
Yes, that's the main idea. The hidden information can be placed inside another live file, while the file itself still looks normal.
Right, and actually this concept isn't completely new. People have been hiding messages for a very long time, even before computer existed. But with modern technology, we can hide information digital inside image, audio, videos, and other types of file. Now, I want to focus on image because I think that's probably the easiest example for us to understand. When we look at digital image, we see colors and shapes, but computer don't see the image the same way we do. They process the image using numbers and binary data. So, Rika, how can a secret message actually be hidden inside an image?
One common technique is called least significant bit or LSB. Digital image contain pixel values and some of the smallest bits can be modified to store hidden information.
Okay, so basically we change a very small part of the digital data in the image, and the interesting thing is the change can be small, sorry, that humans usually can see the difference. For example, imagine we have an original picture, then we put a secret message inside it. The resulting image can still look almost exactly the same as the original. That's why someone looking at the picture normally might have absolutely no idea that there is hidden information inside it.
Exactly. The visual difference can be extremely small.
Okay, that's actually pretty clever. Now, when we talk about secret information, there's another technology that immediately comes to mind, and that is cryptography. A lot of people might think steganography and cryptography are the same thing because both are related to protecting information. But actually, they work different. In cryptography, the message is transformed into something that is difficult to understand. So, if someone intercepts the message, they might see encrypted text or data. With steganography, however, we try to hide the message inside something that looks complete ordinary. So, if cryptography is like putting your message inside a box, steganography is more like hiding that box somewhere that nobody thinks to look.
This good comparison, cryptography hides the meaning of the message, while steganography hides the existence of the message.
Exactly, and actually, these two technologies can even be used together. For example, someone could encrypt a message first, making it unreadable, and then hide the encrypted message inside an image using steganography. That gives you two layers of protection. Now, let's talk about where steganography can actually be used. Because when people hear secret message, they might immediately think about something suspicious. But steganography also has legitimate uses. For example, it can be used for digital photo making. Imagine you are a photographer and you upload your photographs to the internet. Someone could download your photo and repost it somewhere else. A photographer could use hidden information inside the image to indicate ownership.
Yes, that's one of the legitimate application. Hidden information can help with copyright protection or identifying the original owner of digital content.
Okay, right. And there are the other possible uses such as protecting sensitive information or confidential information in situations where you don't want the existence of the message to be obvious. But of course, there is another side to the technology. Just like many other technologies, steganography can also be misused. Someone could potentially hide malicious information inside a file and make it look harmless. That's why cybersecurity professionals are also interested in detecting hidden information. And this brings us to another topic, steganalysis. Rika, can you explain what the steganalysis is?
Steganalysis is basically the process of analyzing files to detect whether hidden information have been embedded inside them.
So, if steganography is about hiding information, steganalysis is about trying to find it. It's almost like a digital game of hide and seek. One person says, I'm going to hide this message, and the other side says, okay, I'm going to find it.
Yes, you can think of it that way.
Okay, and I think that's one of the reasons this topic is interesting in cybersecurity. Because normally when we think about security, we think about password, firewalls, antivirus software, or encryption. But information can also be protected by hiding it, ways that people don't immediately notice. At the same time, security professionals need to understand how hidden information can be detected. Now, I have one more question for you, Rika. Do you think steganography is still relevant today when we already have advanced encryption and cybersecurity system?
Yes, I think it's still relevant as prevision and steganography solve different problems. Steganography provides another way to protect information by hiding its existence.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's an important point for students to understand. Learning about cybersecurity isn't only about learning how to create stranger password or encrypt files. We also need to understand how information can be hidden, transferred, protect, and potentially detect. Steganography gives us different perspective on information security. So let's quickly summarize what we discussed today. First, steganography is a technique for hiding information inside another type of information. And second, digital images are one of the common mediums used for hiding information and techniques because such as LSD can be used to modify small parts of image data. And third, steganography is different from cryptography. Cryptography focuses on making information unreadable, while steganography focuses on hiding the existence of the information. And finally, we have steganalysis. This is used to analyze files and potentially detect hidden information.
Yes, and I think the most interesting thing is that something can look completely normal while actually containing hidden information.
Absolutely. And that's probably the biggest takeaway from today's discussion. The next time you look at the normal image, you might think, is there actually something hidden inside this? Okay. Of course, not every picture contains a secret message, but the technology makes it possible. Okay, well, Rika, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really interesting talking about steganography with you.
Thank you, I'm really enjoying the discussion.
And thank you to everyone who listened to our podcast today. Hopefully, this discussion helped you understand steganography in a simple and more interesting way. Remember, in the world digital, sometimes what you don't see can be just as important as what you do see. That's all for today's episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next podcast. Bye bye. See you next time.
See you next time.
Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast. Today, we're going to talk about something that sounds pretty complicated at first, cryptography. But don't worry, we're not going to make this feel like a computer science lecture. Instead, we're going to talk about how cryptography actually works in things we use every day. And today, I have Reza with me. Hi Reza.
Hi, glad to be here.
Okay, so Reza, let's start with a simple question. When you hear the word cryptography, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Honestly, secret message?
Exactly. I think most people would say the same thing. Like you have a message, you turn into some weird looking code and then nobody else can understand it. But apparently, cryptography isn't just about hiding message, right?
Right. That's actually only one part it. Cryptography can also help us in verify information, protect data from being changed, and even confirm who actually sent something.
Okay, that last part sounds interesting. Let's say I send you a document through the internet. You receive it and you open it, and everything looks normal. How do you know that I actually sent it?
That's where authentication comes in. When we need a way to verify the identity of the sender. One of the technologies that can help with this is a digital signature.
Digital signature. So basically, like signing in a piece of paper.
The idea is similar, but technology is very different. If you put your signature on paper, someone could potentially copy it. A digital signature uses cryptography, so it can be mathematically verified.
Okay, so for example, if I just take a picture of my handwritten signature and put it into a PDF, that's not really a digital signature.
Exactly. That's basically just an image of a signature. A really digital signature involves cryptographic keys and verification.
Okay, now I'm curious. You mentioned cryptographic keys. I heard about public keys and private keys before, but honestly, they can sound confusing. What's the easiest way to understand them?
Think of this way. You have a private key and you keep it secret. Then you have public key which you can share with other people. When you want to digitalize something, you use your private key. Other people can then use your public key to verify signature.
So basically, I keep one key to myself and I give the other one to everyone.
Yes, that's a simple idea.
Okay, that's actually easier to understand. So if I sign a document with my private key, someone else doesn't need my private key to check whether it's really mine. They can use my public key.
Exactly.
Now, here's another word that usually appears when people talk about cryptography hashing. And I know people sometimes think hashing and encryption are some things. They're not right.
No, they're different. Encryption is used to protect information so other people can read it without the proper key. Hashing works differently. You can think of a hash as a kind of the digital fingerprint for data.
Okay, digital fingerprint. Okay, give me an example.
Imagine you have a document. The system creates a hash from the document. If someone changes even a small part of the document, the hash will number change too. So we can use it to help detect whether the document has been modified.
Oh, so it's like checking whether the document is still exactly the same.
Yes,
That makes sense. So if I send you a document and someone secretly changes one sentence in it, the system can potentially detect the something is different.
correct.
And that's where digital signature become even more useful, right? Because we don't just want to know who sent the document, we also want to know whether the document has changed.
Exactly. Digital signature can help with both authenticity and integrity.
Okay, let's bring this into our everyday life. We use website all the time. We see HTTPS, the log icon in the browser, and usually we don't really think about what's happening behind it. Doesn't cryptography play a role there too?
Definitely, HTTPS use cryptography technologies to help secure communication between your browser and a website. There are also digital certificates that help the browser verify the identity of the website.
So when I visit a website, my browser basically wants to know, are you really with the website you're claiming to be?
Yes, that's one way to think about it.
That's pretty interesting because online we can physically see the server. If I walk into a real bank, I can see the building and employees, but online I cannot just look at a server and say, yeah, that's definitely the real bank. So we need technology to establish the trust.
Exactly. That's why digital certificates and certificate authorized are important. They help establish trust between user and online service.
Now let me ask something. If cryptography is so powerful, does that mean we're completely safe when we use it?
Not really. Cryptography can provide strong protection, but I can solve every security problem. For example, if someone gives their password a scammer or their private key gets stolen, the cryptography is in necessarily the problem. The problem can be way or the user handles the security.
So basically, even if we have really strong security technology, we can still mess it up ourselves.
Pretty much.
That's actually relatable. Sometimes the weakest part of security system isn't the technology; it's the person using it.
That's true.
So let's quickly summarize what we've talked about. Cryptography isn't just about hiding secret messages. Encryption helps protect the confidentiality of information. Hashing helps us check whether the data has been changed. Digital signature help verify who signed something and whether the data remains authentic. And digital certificates help us establish trust when using online service. Okay, Reza, if you had to explain cryptography in one simple sentence to someone who knows absolutely nothing about it, what would you say?
It's a cryptography is a way using mathematics and technology to make digital information more secure and trustworthy.
Okay, I like that. And I think the biggest takeaway from today's conversation is the cryptography is actually all around us. We use it when browsing websites, sending information, signing digital documents, and using online service. Most of the time, we don't even notice it. Anyway, Reza, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome. This was fun.
Yeah, definitely. And to everyone listening, hopefully cryptography doesn't sound as complicated as it did before. It's not just about secret codes. It's also about trust, identity, and making sure our digital information stay reliable. That's all for today's episode. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you in the next one. See you. Hello everyone, welcome back to our podcast. I hope you are all doing well. Today we are going to talk about a topic that has become a big part of technology and even our daily lives. The topic is artificial intelligence, or simple AI. I'm sure most of us have heard about AI. We see it on social media, smartphones, websites, and even in applications that we use every day. But sometimes we use AI without really understanding what it actually is. So today we are going to talk about AI in a simple and casual way. And of course, I have a guest with me today. His name is Dava. Hi Dava, welcome to our podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and talk about AI.
You're welcome. Okay, let's start with a very basic question. Dava, what exactly is artificial intelligence?
Artificial intelligence is a technology that allows computer systems to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. For example, AI can recognize images, understand language, learn from data, find patterns, and help make decisions.
Okay, so basically AI allows computer to do these things that we normally associate with human intelligence. But I think a lot of people still imagine AI as a robot that looks and acts like a human. Is that actually what AI is?
Not really. Robots can use AI, but AI itself doesn't have to be physical robot. AI can exist as software inside our phones, computers, websites, and applications.
So AI is actually much broader than just robots. And when you think about it, we probably interact with AI more often than we realize. For example, when I use Google Maps to find the fast route, there are intelligent systems helping with things like routers and traffic. When I use social media, the application recommends videos based on what I usually watch. And when I shop online, I often get recommendations for products that are similar to things I've searched for before.
Yes, those are good examples. AI is already used in many everyday applications. It can analyze patterns in our activities and use those patterns to provide recommendation of predictions.
That's interesting because sometimes I feel like social media knows what I want to watch before I even search for it. I watch one video about something and suddenly my feed is full of similar videos.
Yeah, that's something many people experience. The system can learn from our interactions, but such as what we watch, search for, or click on.
Now there's another type of AI that has become extremely popular recently, which is generative AI. We've probably heard about ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and other AI tools. So what exactly is generative AI?
Generative AI is a type of AI that can create new content based on a user's instructions. It can generate things like text, audio, message, images, and so many things. For example, you can ask AI tool to write a story, explain a difficult topic, create an image, or something else.
And that's probably why generative AI has become so popular among students. For example, if I don't understand a topic, I can ask AI to explain it using simple words. I can also use to practice English, brainstorm ideas, or check whether my writing has grammar mistakes. But here's the important question: should students depend on AI for everything?
Of course, no, I don't think so. AI should be used as a tool to support learning, not to replace our own thinking. For example, students can ask AI to explain a difficult concept, but they should still understand the explanation and do the work themselves.
Exactly. Because if we just copy everything from AI without understanding it, we might finish our assignment, but we don't actually learn anything. And that's one of the concern about AI in education. AI can make things easier, but sometimes making things too easy can make us less motivated to think.
It's true. I can save time, but we still need critical thinking. We also need to check whether the information is provided by AI is correct.
That's a really important point. Some people think that because AI gives an answer quickly and confidently, the answer must be correct. But that's not always true. AI can make mistakes or provide incomplete information. So we shouldn't automatically believe everything AI says.
Yes, exactly. It's better to verify input information using reliable sources, especially for academic, medical, legal, or other important topics.
Okay, now let's talk about the advantages of AI. Personally, I think one of the biggest advantages is that AI saves us a lot of time. For example, instead of spending a long time organizing information, AI can help summarize it. Instead of starting a project completely from zero, AI can help us brainstorm ideas, and from programmers, AI can even help explain or generate code. What do you think is it the biggest benefit or AI?
I think one of the biggest benefits is efficiency. I can process a large amount of information very quickly. It can also help people with repetitive tasks so humans can focus more uh, on to more complex or creative work.
Yes, that makes sense. AI can basically become a kind of assistant. But of course, there are also concerns about AI. One of the biggest concerns is probably jobs. Some people are worried that AI will replace humans in the workplace. What do you think about that?
I think AI will change many jobs, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every job will disappear. Some repetitive tasks may be automated, but humans will still be need to creativity, communication, leadership, decision making, and other skills.
So instead of thinking AI is going to replace me, maybe we should think how can I work together with AI?
Yes, exactly. People who know how to use AI effectively may have an advantage in the future.
I agree with that, and I think that's especially important for students. We shouldn't be afraid of AI. Instead, we should learn how it works, understand its limitation, and learn how to use it responsibly. There are also another issue that I think is important: privacy. We often give information to AI tools when we use them. So, shouldn't we be careful about the information we share?
Definitely. We should avoid sharing sensitive or private information with AI tools unless we understand how that information is handled. We should always think before entering personal information into any online service.
That's good point. So AI is powerful, but we still have to be responsible when using it. Now let's talk about the future. Do you think AI will become even more common in the next 10 or 20 years?
Yes, I think so. AI will probably become more integrated into education, healthcare, transportation, business, and many other areas because the technology will continue to develop. So people will need to continue learning and adapting.
I agree. And honestly, I think AI is already changing the way we study, work, communicate, and even create things. The important thing is that humans should still be in control of how to technology is used. AI can help us become more productive, but it shouldn't completely replace human judgment.
Exactly. AI is a tool, and the result depend on how we use that tool. If we use it responsibly, it can provide many benefits.
Okay, well, I think that's a great point to end our discussion. Today, we talk about what artificial intelligence is, example of AI in our daily lives, generate AI, the benefits of AI, its rise, and how many AI may affect our future. And I think the biggest takeaway is pretty simple. We don't need to be afraid of AI. We need to learn how to use it wisely. Dava, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
And thank you to everyone who listened to our podcast. Hopefully, after listening to this episode, you have a better understanding of artificial intelligence and how it is becoming part of our everyday lives. Remember, AI can be a powerful tool, but human intelligence, creativity, and responsibility are still very important. That's all for today's episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.